Hi, my name is Kai Kimppa. I'm a University Research Fellow at University of Turku, and I've written this paper together with researcher Olli Heimo and researcher J. Tuomas Harviainen. We wrote a paper called "There Are No Violent Video Games," and the idea there is that video games themselves are not violent, nor do they cause specifically violence within those who play them. The statistics are very strongly on the side that those who play video games do not commit any more violent acts than those who have other hobbies or do other sports. Nor are the games themselves violent. They are violence depicting, which is quite a different thing. In the abstract that we submitted, unfortunately, we did not have time to submit a full paper. We went through basically the consequence argument, so consequentialist argument, and unfortunately, we did not have time to do a deontological, virtue ethics, or contractarian analysis, although we do aim to do all those at some point. From the consequentialist perspective, Ferguson et al. Have, I think, quite clearly shown that the Anderson et al. Papers, in which they try to find a connection between violence and specifically, but not only, first-person shooter games, does not hold. There are other reasons why that claim is problematic, that video games would cause violent behavior. First of all, overall violence in society has been on the decline since forever, practically, if we believe Steven Pinker, although I do acknowledge the potential problems with that, with the book that he wrote on the better nature of ourselves. But in any case, it is clear that other hobbies and or sports are much more likely to cause effects which are bodily harmful to ourselves. No one is seriously talking about limiting boxing or American football. Well, boxing in Sweden, you have to use, you can't, the safety equipment, you can't box in the traditional sense anymore. But in most countries, boxing is still an approved sport. Whereas for some weird reason, video games, especially again, first-person shooters, should be banned because they cause so much violence. In American football, practically yearly, well, multiple times per year, someone is either disabled or killed because of American football, whereas pretty much nobody dies because of playing violence depicting computer games. The whole discussion on this topic seems to be more or less moot. We've had these discussions with movies. We've had this discussion with tabletop games such as Dungeons and Dragons, which was supposed to make Satan worshippers out of all the players. We've had these discussions on books, even on the translation of the Bible back in the day to native languages, because people wouldn't understand and would make the kinds of deductions that were not approved by the priest class at the time. We've had these discussions with pretty much every potential form of entertainment since the beginning of time. And yet, despite of this, the society on average seems to become less and less violent. could it be that pastimes such as tailing or hanging or cutting off heads with an axe are not as conductive to non-violence in the society as our current pastimes are? Even boxing is very much more limited these days than it used to be, at least in civilized countries. We're using shields and gloves which are softened so that even though the hits still are very hard, it's not the same as using directly strong leather straps around your hands with which you can just basically save your knuckles, but not the opponent's face from the hits. From a deontological perspective, it seems to be clear that in cases where computer games are made, the persons doing the games do not intend the games to cause violence in society, but intend to make money, make that money through entertaining the people who are willing to pay for the computer games. From a consequentialist perspective, well, that we went through already in this video. From a virtue ethics perspective, we claim that just playing video games is not the same as actually practicing killing, such as using real guns and real environments in which those skills are being practiced. So that's typical making a habit out of a certain action to make it into a character feature is not applicable. It's like claiming that playing chess would make someone a great strategist. That is clearly not true. The same is true with playing Panzer General. It doesn't matter how many hundreds of hours I play Panzer General, I do not learn to become a general leading armies in the field. The same is true with other video games like first-person shooters. If you've ever shot with a real gun, you know the difference, especially if you've shot with anything heavier than a pistol. Try a machine gun or anti-tank weapon or a real 15-inch gun and you'll know the difference. Computer games do not build that kind of character. Also, if I play a surgeon game, I do not become a qualified surgeon. If I play a FIFA game, I do not become a qualified football player. The same is true with other games such as first-person shooters. Finally, returning to the argument about other sports and hobbies being accepted, which are clearly more prone to both accidents, such as climbing mountains or even just walls, or playing American football or similar hobbies or sports. It is in our social contracts that these are accepted. So from a social contract perspective, we should definitely go first and worry about those games and hobbies which are clearly causing physical, bodily harm and even killing people. Computer games, even if we give some credence to Anderson and his ilk's research, which I don't, those would not be the first things to go after. I hope this video has raised some thoughts in you, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion during the conference, especially during my presentation. Kaikimpa out. See you next week.